Nikki, I love that you staffed help in the Senate.
I
So I'm the
did.
ranking member now, but I was the chair of our help subcommittee and I love it.
So I have to admit that working on the help committee was my dream job. It was the job I most wanted when it came to DC. So it was really a lot of fun.
And with that, we're ready to go.
You're going to give me a 3, 2, 1?
You're all set. Live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our town hall virtual one with a wonderful, wonderful guest that is important part of a really important, from my perspective, nonprofit that helps inform Americans really about our democracy. And I know there's a lot of information out there, but there are some really trusted and true places you can go to. And it's hard to get to them, but I'm delighted to do this town hall with Democracy Forward and with their policy director, who I will introduce and turn the town hall over to her in just a few minutes. First, we're going to go through our PowerPoint. As you who are frequent flyers to our town halls, I'm told, just correct me if I'm wrong, this is our 234th town hall, the most in Congress for the last 10 and a half years that I've been here. And feedback we get is our constituents enjoy it very much, and I very much enjoy it. So we hope this will be successful. I am speaking to you from my office here in the Rayburn building on the Capitol Hill campus. It's hot here. I wish I was home. It's 100 degrees outside and the humidity is about 60 something percent last I checked. So don't feel sorry for me. I just want to tell you how grateful it is just to think for a moment of being in California and all the wonderful things about living there. But I also am very thrilled, as I often tell you, and truly honored to represent the California 10th District in the United States House of Representatives. It's a special place, and I'm very, very truly honored that you allow me to serve in this position. So we were going to go through our PowerPoint. For those of you who engage with our town halls frequently, you know that these can be dense, so I'm going to go through them quickly. And the purpose is to just give you an overview, but please avail yourself, if I go too quickly, to go back on our social media or on our website. We have all of our PowerPoints that we've done on all of the 234 town halls on there. As I often say, if you can't get a good night's sleep, you can also always go to our PowerPoints on our website. So this is the title, Virtual Town Hall on Our Fight for Democracy, and our special guest, who we will turn to shortly. Next. There we go. So this is just an overview. Again, for those of you who watch our PowerPoints, we start with this because elections have consequences. And in this kind of political environment, it has really incredible consequences, in so much that we're very polarized. And you've heard me talk about the reasons for that. We've done town halls about Citizens United and primaries, and it's just a unique period of time in our history. And it's a challenge because it's very hard to get any Republicans to join us, and it's gotten harder in the time I've been here. So that's the challenge. We have 3 vacancies. All of those are from members who have left early, unfortunately for health reasons. And they're all in the process of going through special elections to fill those positions. But right now, this is the state of play. So elections are important. We have one a year from now. We'll be in the primary season for the midterms, and obviously just before the general election on the first Tuesday in November next year. And then, of course, the presidential election is in 3.5 years. Next. So these are just some of the things, and this is my view. I really do think our core, not to be, this isn't hyperbole at any stretch of the imagination. This current administration does not look at our democracy from a perspective that, at least in my lifetime, I remember any Republican or Democrat approaching, and I include Richard Nixon in that group. But the deploying of the National Guard and the Marines in Los Angeles, and all the things that have happened down there. Fortunately, the mayor, Karen Bass, who I was lucky enough to serve with in the state legislature and here in Congress, who is one of the best elected I have met in my time in office, has done a very good job, in my view, of expressing her opposition to what's happening, but also advocating for people to demonstrate in a peaceful way that wouldn't provoke what I think the current president wants to happen is unfortunately a violent confrontation. And that's not good for anybody. So we're hoping things continue as they are in the sense of not going to violence, but continue to demonstrate in every way we can with every tool we have in the courts, on the streets, and in the Congress, in the minority, to make sure that we put the brakes on this attack on our rule of law and the Constitution of the United States. And then it goes through the rest of those bullet points, and I'm not going to go through everyone, except for the second to last one. Having been one of the last members of Congress evacuated on January 6th, I have a very personal belief in what he did on the pardoning and what he did that day. And I think that was sent a message about lawlessness that historians will point to as a very dark period in this country's history for many decades to go. Next. So this is what we want to get into a little bit more. The administration has issued executive orders, 161. Nikki can talk to this with more detail, but he clearly, there has been battles over executive and administrative power within the natural tension that Madison, the founders, devised between the legislative branch, a co-equal branch of government, and the president. So, but this president, again, from my perspective, has attacked and used that executive privilege to a degree that no other president, in my perspective, certainly in the modern history of this country, has done. So our most effective tool so far has been to use with our partners, and in that regards, I mean Democrats working with like-minded people and appropriately and effectively and respecting our roles in that, which are defined enough. And as the ranking member of the Ethics Committee, I appreciate this. But doing it in such a way that is constructive, uses our resources, adheres to law and our ethics rules, but also has been enormously effective. And I'll point you to just some of the numbers: 161 executive orders. There have been 290 lawsuits have been filed. 184 court orders have been issued blocking, at least temporarily, Trump's actions. And I think the last two numbers really speaks a lot to our effectiveness. The administration in this cycle has lost 96% of federal district court cases against his administration and had a 78% loss rate in the court cases during the first administration. So we were effective the first time, but we learned from the first time, and Nikki can speak to this more, but we've been very effective through the courts. And these are judges that have been appointed by Democrats and Republicans and the current president as well, which from what you read in the media annoys him greatly. But they're exercising their independence under the Constitution, and I would say also their ethical and moral responsibilities under the Constitution. Next. These are just some quotes that we picked, but there are lots more, and I think they're very succinct from the bench. An American president is not a king, not even an elected one, and his power to remove federal offices and honest civil servants is not absolute, but may be constrained in appropriate circumstances are present here. I won't read all of them, but I think there's a lot of them to choose from, so these aren't cherry picked, but we just thought these were the best. I thought these were the best. Next. So this is just a sort of little report card that is basically describes what I just described in a little more detail. I'm not going to go through each one, but you can look at these and go back to them. They'll be, as I said in my introduction, available for you online on our social media and on our website. Next. So we've done a lot, and I will point to the highlighted one as first. The Assistant Democratic Leader Joe Neguse, an attorney, representative from Colorado, and Congressman Jamie Raskin, a wonderful, good friend. All of them are good friends, truly. Jamie is a very dear friend. We served on the Oversight Committee together for many years. He's a alumni of Harvard, the Harvard Law School, and nationally respected congressional expert who also has been elected. He got elected to the Maryland State Legislature and continues, and he's the current ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee, and he's been really the lead on this along with Assistant Democratic Leader Representative Neguse, and then Congressman Rosa DeLauro, another wonderful friend of mine, and my predecessor, George Miller, who is the ranking member, Senior Democratic on Appropriations, really three rock stars, and they've been very effective, and I've been proud to work with them as most as I can to make this effective. So we've got a team, they're an excellent team, and they're being effective. So again, this goes into more detail about the things that I've been able to do. These are frustrating because we are restricted as to what we can do, but we are being very aggressive about fighting them every way we can with every legal, ethical tool at our disposal and continuing to try to be more creative in that regard every single day. And we have great leadership, and I would include myself in that, and being very active now, senior member of the House of Representatives. Next. So there's our contacts. And at this point, I will turn it over to Nikki. Let Nikki do her introduction, but Nikki has a long resume. We promised each other we wouldn't go into the long resume, but it's available. And I'm just delighted you're with us here, Nikki, today. So the Policy Director of Democracy Forward, Nikki McKinney.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
Absolutely. Apologies, Nikki. Nikki McKinney. Before we get started with you, I just want to ask our audience, if you're interested in asking questions, please use the Q&A feature on Zoom, or if you're watching live on YouTube, you're more than welcome to ask a question on YouTube as well. We'll be monitoring both, but as Nikki presents and shares her information, we want to make sure to gather any questions that may be that individuals watching may have, and so that way we can make sure to include that after your presentation. Thank you so much.
Janessa, will you just identify yourself so that people
Apologies,
who don't
yes.
follow us and frequent flyers know who you are?
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Janessa Oriel. I'm the district director for Congressman DeSaulnier, and I am happy to be here as your host today, or moderator is a better way to put it. And so want to make sure I know that the Congressman did introduce Nikki, but I will also do a very brief introduction, again, not diving into all the accolades. But we're joined by Nikki McKinney, Senior Advisor in Policy for Policy and Public Affairs with Democracy Forward. She previously worked on the Hill as a teacher by training and served as an Associate Deputy Secretary for the U.S. Department of Labor. Nikki, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Janessa, and thank you, Congressman, for the opportunity to join you and the good constituents of California's 10th Congressional District. For those of you who have never heard of Democracy Forward before, do not worry. We are a relatively new organization established in 2016 following the presidential election. It was a group of litigators who saw that there could be potentially attacks on our Constitution and on democracy, and they formed a small nonprofit designed to represent clients who wanted to go to court against some of the executive actions and orders of President Trump during his first term. We have grown significantly since then. A small organization back at the end of 2016 of a handful of attorneys is now an organization of over 100. We are in court every single day on behalf of clients and organizations. I would venture to guess that many of you are represented by or affiliated with organizations that we are representing in court every day, because we see it as our public duty to hold this administration accountable. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about our work, but don't worry if you've never heard of us, but just know that Democracy Forward partner organizations like ours are working every day with individuals like Congressman DeSaulnier and his Democratic colleagues in both the House and the Senate to hold the administration accountable and to push back against some of their dangerous actions. I won't go over some of the numbers. The Congressman did it so eloquently, excuse me, in his introduction. For our part of the nearly 290 cases that have been filed, Democracy Forward is responsible for 71 of those legal actions. We've also launched over 90 investigations since January 20th. And we are winning. We have secured wins and are bringing together a really unique coalition of more than 500 organizations to address this administration's dangerous and harmful policies that are impacting those of you on this call and folks all across the country. I want to tell you a few of our cases that I think might be of interest to your constituents, Congressman. First, many folks were really alarmed to see the president's OMB funding freeze memo. Within 7 days of inauguration, he issued that memo. Democracy Forward won the very first court order and the only nationwide injunction to prevent implementation of that funding freeze, ensuring that federal dollars impacted by that OMB memo continued to go out. After filing that, we were in court within 24 hours of that OMB memo going out. We have subsequently filed cases to protect funding from IIJA, or the infrastructure law that Congressman DeSaulnier was so critical in having passed during the Biden administration, as well as funding through the Inflationary Reduction Act, or IRA. We were able to secure a federal court order in that case, unfreezing billions of congressionally appropriated funds, and ensuring that critical investments could continue to happen, that roads and bridges could continue to be built, and other improvements. One of the other things that I think Americans across the country have been really alarmed by is Elon Musk and DOGE. We have been working tirelessly to challenge some of DOGE's actions, like gutting federal agencies and eviscerating really millions of dollars that in services that Americans rely on every single day. We are fighting DOGE every step of the way, pushing back. We were actually able to block we were able to get a court order, the first of its kind, compelling discovery by DOGE. And so we are delving into and getting a little bit more transparency into the work of DOGE, even with Elon Musk having stepped aside. We're also working to protect education, healthcare, and your civil rights. We were the first to take action to prevent the administration from dismantling the Department of Education. We filed a lawsuit in that we are representing some school districts as well as teachers' unions. We're also fighting back against the Trump administration and its allies in some state cases as they continue to target women's reproductive health. We teamed up with the manufacturer of generic mifepristone in order to protect that drug from legal attacks. We also know that the United States has been a leader globally, and we are seeing our place as a global leader in diplomacy under attack as well. We are leading the charge there to preserve the U.S. leadership on the world stage. We won a court order pausing USAID employees from being fired and are representing the president of a small organization that some folks have never heard of. It's called the U.S. African Development Foundation. We're also representing clients on behalf of Voice of America, Radio Free Asia. These are organizations that ensure free press and that important information is getting out, as well as the Middle Eastern Broadcast Network. These are all organizations and entities that have been attacked by this administration because they put out accurate information. And so they have been defunded, had individuals fired, and so we are protecting them. Similarly, I think many of us have been really concerned about the attack on civil servants. And I know, Congressman, in your district, you've got federal employees who are doing, providing essential services on behalf of folks every single day, whether they are inspectors that are ensuring folks get proper wage and hour or being paid fairly. OSHA inspectors are making sure their workplaces are healthy. They're folks who are processing passports. They are Social Security administrators, right? Like, it runs the gamut in San Francisco and the Bay Area, generally the number of federal employees that you have there. And this is an attack on those individuals, unlike anything we've ever seen before. So we've been really laser focused on this even before inauguration because we saw this coming. Project 2025 was a real laid out the roadmap of what we saw this administration or thought this administration was capable of. So we launched an initiative called Civil Service Strong that I want to make sure your constituents are aware of. You can go to civilservicestrong.org. There are resources and frequently asked questions and other information. If you are a federal employee, if you've been impacted by any of the risks, if you know a federal employee, if you just like a federal employee, please make sure they know about civilservicestrong.org. There are really amazing materials there for your constituents. And it's run by the former Deputy Director of the Office of Personnel Management. So we've brought in the best here at Democracy Forward to help lead that effort. And we have filed cases, particularly with the Office of Special Counsel, that have gone to the MSPB, and we were able to secure the reinstatement of employees at USDA and across the federal government as a result of some of our cases. We're pushing back on the Schedule F regulations, which would undermine civil service protections for federal employees. And we also obtained a nationwide injunction to block the reorganization of the federal government. So we are really fighting on behalf of federal employees every single day in court. We also know, and this is impacting the state of California right now, we're doing important work in the immigration space. I know many folks were alarmed by what I would describe as the abduction of individuals from the United States and really taken to foreign gulags in El Salvador and elsewhere. So we filed a case pushing back on the administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act. We're also challenging the legality of the underlying agreement that facilitated the removal of folks to El Salvador. And the cases go on and on and on. We have seen, however, real attacks on lawyers like those at Democracy Forward and on judges. Those are incredibly dangerous. And so we are working to ensure that individuals understand that there is a real chilling effect on individuals' ability to go to court if both judges are fearful and the lawyers who represent those individuals are fearful. That for us isn't a red or blue issue, and I know it's true for you as well, Congressman. That's really an issue that is bipartisan. We have to have free and safe ability for individuals to have a day in court if they see fit. So again, I want to make sure people are aware of Civil Service Strong for those folks who are federal civil servants or know a federal employee. But I also want to let everybody know about Democracy 2025. This was another initiative that we launched. If you are just interested in the legal effort to push back against the administration, not just Democracy Forwards, but the totality of civil society's pushback against the administration in the court, please go to democracy2025.org. There is information about all the cases that Representative DeSaulnier and I have talked about, and many, many more. So please avail yourself of those resources if you're trying to figure out where the pushback is. We're doing our level best in courts. The congressman is doing his level best in Congress. Many of you are out in the streets. We saw many of you out for No King's Day and other rallies across the country. So if I was betting in Vegas, us against an autocrat, Congressman, my money is on all of us. So with that, I'll turn things back over to you, Janessa, and the Congressman. Happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Thank you so
Nikki.
much, Nikki. Absolutely. We'll now move on to the question and answers section for our town hall. As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen in Zoom, or submit your questions through the YouTube comments. Our first question is from Glenn from Concord. The Supreme Court just allowed, for now, the deportation of people to third countries, even ones that have no connection to, by pausing a lower court order that required notice and a chance to object. Since this comes from a federal statute, I would like to know your thoughts about the prospects of changing this law to prevent this kind of removal and to at least ensure that people have basic protections. Thank you.
Well, there's a number of bills that we are in the process of doing in the Democratic caucus and have written and submitted. When we submit a bill here in the House of Representatives, it literally goes into the hopper, if you've heard that expression. But the Speaker of the House has full control whether that ever goes to a committee or has any discussion. So we don't expect we will have any discussions. As many of you have heard me talk often, is when we have had bipartisan bills to deal with this and other issues around immigration, starting with the Gang of Eight 12 years ago, just before I got to Congress. Nikki shaking her head, leadership of both parties, Senator McCain, Rubio on the Republican side, Senators Durbin and Schumer on the Democratic side, and I'm spacing on the other four. That passed out of the Senate, I think, with almost 70 votes. And then when it came into the House, John Boehner has a wonderful, sad description of when he was Speaker, when the Freedom Caucus went and basically demanded that he not bring it up for a vote because they didn't want to vote on it either way. There's been multiple examples of that, including in the last quarter before the election. That wasn't a bill I would vote for, but it was at least an effort. And the candidate Trump publicly said, I don't want it to go any further, and it didn't because, in my view, they want to disrupt it. So to this specific extreme example, that is all under the context of, if the Supreme Court views this way, I'll turn to Nikki, if there are strategies to try to contest that through the judicial process, given how the Supreme Court has opined, then we can do that on the judicial side, as I understand it. But here in Congress, we have to change it, and that involves winning elections so we can have a constructive, hopefully bipartisan conversation about what do we do about immigration in this country and making sure that we're following the rule and the spirit of the law that welcomes people to come to this country, and we need them. As a former small business owner, I talk to business owners in our district, around our country all the time. We need immigration for workforce, just as we have over the whole history of this country. Nikki, you have any comments specifically to that case?
I do. And my boss, Skye Perryman, the president and CEO of Democracy Forward, was actually on MSNBC talking about this. I want to be clear, I'm not a lawyer. I only represent the 90 or so litigators who are on our team, and I try to do my best. But in the conversations we've been having and in my boss's remarks on MSNBC today, which you can go back and watch, we are incredibly concerned, and I think everybody should be really concerned that the Supreme Court is issuing orders that are pausing what lower federal courts have decided, really endangering everyone's rights. Because I think we can all imagine a universe under which one of us or somebody we know or love could be plucked out of, off the street by an unnamed, unmarked individual and sent to a third world country, and we never be able to make our way back. So the other part that's really, most people don't read Supreme Court decisions. Nobody has that time anymore. But the other thing that's concerning about it is that the majority didn't really explain their rationale. And that's what's also missing in this moment, a sort of a sense of any legal clarity, just from a layman's perspective. So again, we are incredibly concerned, but I want to just be clear. My boss has said clear, the Constitution is still intact. And you've seen the federal judge in this case issue an order this morning about the particular plaintiffs in this case. So again, for organizations like Democracy Forward and so many others, we really just want to let the folks on this call know that we are in court every day. We are going to continue to fight. And if there is a legal case to be made and an argument to try to go back to the Supreme Court with, you are going to find somebody there. If it's not Democracy Forward, it'll be one of our amazing partners. So stay tuned is what I would say.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is from an anonymous attendee. Can you talk about the U.S. strikes in Iran on Saturday? What are your thoughts on a war powers resolution in Congress?
Yeah, so thank you. I was hoping and anticipated that this would be a question, so I didn't include it in my opening comments. And because it's evolving so quickly, yes, I'm a co-author, co-sponsor of Republican Representative Massey from Kentucky's bill that Ro Khanna's also a lead co-sponsor of, my neighbor to the south in the Bay Area. So that is one effort, and it's bipartisan. We only need a handful of Republicans to join us, and all it does is it goes back to the War Powers Act and says the president cannot take military action against Iran without consulting with the Congress and getting approval. So the War Powers Act, the Constitution says that only the Congress can declare war. Well, war's changed a lot since we were carrying muskets, and we have to update the definition of the War Powers Act, I think, and the original, maybe amend the Constitution. But then the War Powers Act came along, not going into the whole details, but Gulf of Tonkin and other situations that were not completely honest in both Republican and Democratic administrations. But in this instance, these actions are just outrageous. What he's done is a clear violation of both, in my view. So we do have the Massey bill that I'm a co-author of. We also have another one from Adam Smith, who's just the ranking member on armed services. He gave a long explanation to a small group of us twice earlier today about his strategy and what that resolution does. So it's more detailed about the use of the military, and is a clear, to me, thoughtful way of sending a message to the military that we're watching, and elections have consequences. And so it's just outrageous what he has done. And just, if you remember weapons of mass destruction, when we did a similar effort under the George W. Bush administration, which caused a chaos and loss of American lives and lots of innocence. Similarly with this, there's a lot of material in terms of what we were going after Iran and whether it was strategically right or not, whether the threat was real. And also the threat of them developing a Hiroshima-type bomb is actually, I would argue, and I've listened to experts since this event, that Iran's ability to do that was always there. So not the kind of modern day nuclear weapon, but one that could do significant damage. So all of that is in a very complicated part of the world. 20% of the petroleum energy resources go through the Strait of Hormuz, I'm not saying it right, through that strategic waterway, and Iran has a great ability to disrupt that. Their parliament voted today to say that they were going to close it. The New York Times says, well, that's important, but the military decides things in Iran, so we'll see what happens. But the price of gasoline is already going up because of all of this, and it will go up more, which affects the world's economy. So all of this is very, very reckless, very thoughtless, the consequences of what he's done. And it didn't work. So the New York Times has a story today just on a released preliminary assessment by our intelligence agencies. It basically says the attack didn't do very much in terms of actually what it was designed to do in stopping Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon. So very, very concerning, not a very well, it was a very reckless decision by one person, ignoring the recommendations of many experts, Republicans and Democrats, not to use this tool. And then lastly on this is, you've got to go back to what happened when Trump was first elected, where the joint effort by Russia, France, and you got to realize Russia's influence over Iran in this dynamic, which is close. In all the Western powers, Germany, and I was part of that when I first got here and listened to the negotiators in small meetings. We were making great headway with the Obama administration in a largely bipartisan way at that effort to bring this under control in a thoughtful way with lots of partners. Remind yourself again of H.W. Bush, a Republican president with lots of experience on foreign affairs, who understood that you have to work with a coalition in the global world that we live in right now. What President Trump did when he first got elected was he walked away from that. So now he's talking about going back to it. And to me, this was so reckless all the way through and thoughtless. You have to really think these decisions through. They have long-term consequences, and they could light a match that could put us to a very difficult situation in the whole global atmosphere very quickly, militarily and financially. So we're fighting back with everything we've got. Just a few hours ago, I voted against a motion to table by the Republicans by a floor action that would say we would adjourn, which means we would just shut down right now. And I was in a group of, I think, about 80 Democrats who voted against our efforts to shut it down, to basically cool everything down and get calmer heads to come in and say, we've got to stop this. I was also a member who voted to advance Representative Al Green's impeachment proceedings on a privilege resolution that was brought to the floor just hours ago. I think we should proceed with impeachment, I support it under these circumstances of starting the procedure. That takes you to the end of the procedure when you would actually vote on the House floor of whether to impeach or not, and then it would go over to the Senate for the trial, which we did. You have to be strategic about this, but I think from my perspective, doing everything we can to slow this down, slow this madness down right now is important. So thank you for the question. Sorry I went on. I knew it was going to come up, but I was hoping to explain that to that degree. I could go on longer, and we will do town halls in the near future about the situation in the Middle East, because it's very, very dangerous.
Nikki, do you have anything to add, or shall I move to the next question?
I'll just say that I know people are probably wondering if this is a space where there will be some litigation. As the congressman said at the outset, I think it's an evolving scenario, but I know that there are organizations, including ours, who are looking at and thinking about whether or not there is litigation. So I can't speak to it right now, but it is one of those spaces where from the moment Saturday night started, really smart people began to think about whether or not this was legal. And I think we agree with the congressman that he's gone outside of his authority. So stay tuned.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is from Kate M. What is the Democratic Party doing to ensure safe and fair elections for 2026 to avoid Democratic votes being tossed as fake or not eligible votes, specifically in red states?
Okay, well, we didn't do the first PowerPoint presentation just explaining that this is a government town hall, not a campaign town hall. So I am under the rules of this is taxpayer funded. I can express my opinion. Obviously I am. But the minority party Democrats have been active since the first W election, when the election was decided in Florida by a handful of votes in that election. This last election, we lost the House majority, gaining the House majority by less than 80,000 votes in strategic parts of the country. We also know that if we had the same voter turnout as we had the previous presidential election, we would most likely have control over the House, and Vice President Kamala Harris would now be the occupant of the Oval Office. So all of these elections are important, but we are working very hard, both in the Congress and with outside organizations. And I think we've made a lot of headway in that regard. And maybe we can do a town hall subsequent to that to go into more specifics. But what happened in the Clinton-Bush administration would not happen today. We've put a lot of effort into this, and it's allowed for more transparency and more accountability. So we've got to continue to stay on this, and we work with the Secretary of States and the Attorney Generals across the country, because our system of elections was diffused as the founders wanted to be. So a lot of that responsibility, and if you understand the history, I think appropriately, are diffused to the states and the locals. However, we have to have one national policy and plan assuring the integrity, irrespective of which party is to blame for these things, to make sure that voters have confidence in the system, that their votes mattered and they're not being manipulated. And unfortunately, in this country, we have had a long history of good elections, but also both parties being creative about it. I'm saying, so I don't mean to laugh about it, but this is a real concern. But we've been very, very active for over a decade in making sure that things that have happened won't happen again. And in the courts as well.
Excellent. From Phil on YouTube, the Supreme Court is out of control. What are the prospects for ethics reform and expanding the court?
Well, I'll start with that. The Senate has done a lot of good work to do this, just saying the Supreme Court at least should adhere to the same ethics rules that the rest of the federal bench does. It's outrageous that they don't, and they have said that they would work, at least publicly, on getting some ethics reforms. But I went to a small Catholic college in Worcester, Massachusetts. I was a freshman when Clarence Thomas was a senior. I remember him, and the things that he has done that's publicly been announced are just, he shouldn't be in office. And if all else fails, he should be impeached. But the idea that the Supreme Court has its own self-determining ethics rules is just outrageous. And how can Americans have confidence in that court when the things that have been reported on the justices, many of the justices' relationships, the current ones and past, are not being addressed? And Nikki, you can speak to this probably with greater level of detail.
No, not a whole lot to add there. I mean, so much like the congressman had caveats, we are a C3, and so our predominant role is to educate and do outreach to the Hill and to individuals. So while I know there is a lot of work being done in both the House and Senate around ethics reform, and I think in my personal capacity, that is really needed across the board. Efforts to reform the court, I think are, just given the political dynamics, are probably difficult at best, but nothing much more to say beyond what you had said, Congressman.
Yeah, and just end is it's elections matter. If you go through the history of all of these appointments, from my perspective, when you look at the wonderful reporting on the Koch network, they've spent 40, 50 years in being very strategic about filling the bench with people who believe in their very libertarian. John Birch, I remember my dad as a Republican legislator complaining about dad on the John Birch Society, the Koch that started all this in many ways. So they have been very strategic and successful at, I mean, remember Marlon Garrett. So they have taken this over as the ranking Democrat on the House Ethics Committee, who was asked to do this by Speaker Jeffries. I just think ethics are very important, and people have to trust us with all our human frailties, government employees, government electeds, government appointees, and certainly the members of the Supreme Court. People have to trust in their virtue, or at least their attempted virtue in ethics and transparency. And clearly we don't have that on the bench at the Supreme Court right now. There are good people over there, but there are some notable exceptions to that, thank goodness, the free press has reported on that.
Excellent, thank you. The next question is from Julia. Can you clarify who will enforce the judicial orders? What are the potential impacts for noncompliance?
Nikki, you want to take that? I will say that in one of the challenges on the reconciliation bill, they have put a lot of things in there, including an ability to make it harder for the bench to actually enforce contempt decisions. So maybe you can speak to the latest on that, but fortunately, the Senate parliamentarian's doing her job in many of these things.
She sure is. So thank you for that question. And I will make sure that the congressman has, we actually put together a little fact sheet around what courts can do in order to compel compliance, because we are seeing, I think, and I was telling the congressman earlier, I think this is my 20th town hall. I think as an organization, we've done nearly 50. This question has come up on every single town hall, which means that this is an issue that people are really concerned about. I think it is safe to say that this administration has been, their compliance with court orders has been shoddy at best. I think judges, again, to your point earlier, Democrat, Republican, appointed judges, including judges appointed by President Trump himself, have become very frustrated during status conferences with lawyers who are, not just at Democracy Forward, but across organizations, when they come in and they have to show how the administration is complying with a court order, and they often come in with incomplete information, inaccurate information, or we are seeing now whistleblowers at DOJ who have come forth and said there are actual real attempts to simply ignore court orders. So courts do have a number of efforts, a number of means at their disposal, including and up to using the U.S. Marshal Service. Most people know the U.S. Marshal Service probably from the movie The Fugitive, but the Marshal Service performs a very critical function in that they are responsible with ensuring that parties comply with court orders. And so which is why the new director of, there's actually a nominee to head the U.S. Marshal Service, and he was asked about this during his confirmation hearing. He had done a similar role in Florida, and he understood that that was a role not only to ensure court compliance, or to ensure compliance with court orders rather, but also to protect judges who we know are also under attack. So there is a full panoply of ways in which courts can ensure compliance. The other thing that we have on our side is that lawyers themselves, if they are barred, have an ethical obligation to comply. And we are going to begin to see, and we can see that the bar, wherever they are barred, can sanction those lawyers for failure to comply with court orders. And these are individuals who have gone to law school and taken on hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt probably, and don't want to have their bars, their bar licenses revoked. So there's not only a personal liability on behalf of lawyers, including those at DOJ who are representing the administration, but courts can they have a number of means at their disposal. And Congressman, I will make sure that you have that fact sheet so you can put it up on your website or distribute as you see fit. But you're right that there was a real strong effort. The House passed reconciliation bill does include a really dangerous provision that would require bonds in order to enforce a court order. And you're right, a similar, though slightly modified version was included in this Senate bill. The parliamentarian has just ruled that it failed what we call the Byrd test in the Senate, an arcane and ridiculous thing that nobody needs to know about on this call, but she did rule it failed the Byrd test. So there are two things can happen. Republicans will choose to strip it from the bill, so you won't see it again in the Senate version, or they'll include it, and I suspect Democrats would raise a point of order, and it requires 60 votes in the Senate to waive the point of order, which presumably Republicans don't have. But it's just yet another part of the attack on Article 3 courts and on the judicial process writ large, which I think is really alarming because it is the one way we as Americans can hold our government to account. And so efforts to undermine it, I think, are really dangerous and should concern all of us. So thank you for the question. It's really important, and I will make sure that you have that resource.
Excellent, thank you. Tim and Dennis both asked this question. Who has the confidential information DOGE obtained, and what protections are in place to keep that information safe?
That's a great question. We really don't know because of how broadly it was released and to whom it was released. My guess is it's probably very broadly available to people. And as somebody, well, we all have concerns about this. So it was outrageous that it happened. And it's really dangerous. So elections matter. When there's a different majority party, you will be reading about oversight hearings on the committees of jurisdiction and investigations on all of this. But in the meantime, we've got to fight every way we can, which is what this is about, this town hall. And a lot of that here is every way we can with the tools we have, and then trying to find Republicans who come to their senses. And I'm not naive about this, but I continue to try to. There are Republicans over there, and they may frustrate me the most because there are a lot who don't know any better for a variety of reasons, but there are still a few who know better, and they make me angrier because how can you go along with all this? And this is a prime example, the damage that was done by Elon Musk and the stupidity of DOGE. We've got a lot of institutions that deal with government efficiency. I've been very involved with that. I was on the oversight committee for 8 years before it became totally polarized. I did this at the state level and the local level. I believe that oversight and efficiency should be nonpartisan, and it used to be. The effective use of your tax dollars and how it's transparent it is. This person who I've met, Elon Musk, has no idea about efficiency. He has a certain arrogant approach to it, but in terms of the complexity of government services, not a clue. And what he did made government less efficient, and attracting young people to go into public service, as Nikki has talked about, the attack on civil servants and public servants. The vast majority of people that I've met in public service, having come from the private sector and been a private business owner, you get tremendous value from them. Are they all good? No. Are there cultural shortcomings? We can make it more performance driven. But what Elon Musk did was absolutely horrible and destructive, and it's going a long time to fix it. For your personal information, unfortunately, we don't know how available it is. And Nikki, if you have any information, please feel free to add.
Yeah, this was a really important case of ours around particularly DOGE's access to information at Social Security Administration and the Department of Labor. You know, you need oversight, to the congressman's point, when you don't have transparency. And I think it's really disheartening when your president, when an administration fails to provide transparency to you around information that is yours. And so we sued on behalf of Americans, anybody who has information in the Social Security Administration, which is nearly everybody, both to stop their access, DOGE's access to the information. We were successful, and we received the first ever court order, which required DOGE at the time to delete and disgorge all of the Social Security Administration data that they had received access to. And as I said earlier, we also got discovery. We were able to compel discovery so that we could talk to folks about the information that they had had. None of that information that I have right now is information that I can share currently, but I think it is really disturbing that the Supreme Court, to the congressman's earlier point, recently ruled that DOGE could continue to have access to this sort of personally identifiable information. The reason that that's worrisome, I think, to folks on this call, and just to be really clear, is that federal employees do in fact have access to this information. They have access to it every day, but there are a few things that are different. You know who those individuals are. We know who has access to it. There are requirements and parameters around their access to it, and all of that information is publicly available so that you can have confidence that the individuals who have access to the information are using it appropriately. In this instance, we neither have information about who has access to it, because nobody knows who works for DOGE, what they've accessed, and more importantly, what they are using it for. And so that is why organizations like mine have been in court, and why it's really disturbing that there's a Supreme Court who doesn't seem to think that we will win on the merits of that case. Now, I believe that we will prevail, because I think that there are smart judges out there and there are really intelligent lawyers who are going to try this case. But the fact that that the Supreme Court didn't see fit to find that that was problematic, I think, and overrule a lower court is really concerning. So stay tuned for more on that. But to answer the question, the lack of, I think what you're just getting at is that there isn't transparency, and it's really concerning. But that's why organizations like mine and the congressman and others are fighting really hard on your behalf, and why you need to speak up too, right? Remember your voice in all of this.
Excellent, thank you. This will be the second to last question, we want to make sure to end on time and respect everyone's time. This one's from Susan. Please discuss the use of the discharge petition to bring up bills for a vote on the House floor.
Sure. I've become somewhat of an expert on this, having been on the Rules Committee. All the bills have to go to Rules, and when we were in the majority, I was proud of the fact that I was on there, and my colleagues voted me to be the vice chair. So I did a discharge petition, got a lot of press when we were dealing with the raising of the debt limit. It looked like we were going to shut down. So basically, any member can create a bill, take it down, and it's a way to go around the speaker's control. You need 218 members to literally go down into the well of the United States House of Representatives and sign it, sign the discharge petition in front of the clerk. So it's basically notarized in a public venue. And when you get to 218, it immediately starts to come to the floor. That's the only way really to get around the speaker's control with the House's rules. Having been in multiple legislative bodies and seen them, and having been on the executive board of the National Conference of State Legislatures for sometimes representing California, I'm a wonky guy. I like looking at different legislative bodies have different rules. For instance, in California, you're allowed so many bills, and you can submit them in a session, and they have to at least go to Rules Committee and then have a reason not go to Committee of Jurisdiction. In the House, we don't have those kind of rules. It's all centered in the Speaker's office. So the discharge petition is one way to get around it. We try to be strategic about it, and we're trying to right now to put pressure on the Republicans to get the necessary people to come down and grow up, like I did a couple sessions ago on that bill. That discharge petition had got national attention, and I know that it had a lot to do with Speaker McCarthy coming to his senses at that point and working with us to get the budget in such a way that we didn't shut down the federal government. So it's a very important tool, but it has to be used with some thought and some strategic considerations as to who the votes you're going after, making sure we get every Democrat to sign on it, and create enough public pressure for Republicans to come to their senses. And I don't want to tell you more than that, but we're actively working on discharge petitions that will put more pressure on Republicans to come over and join us on being sensible about what we're doing right now and what the president's doing right now.
Excellent, thank you. And the last question is from Paul on YouTube. Nobody voted for open borders. Please explain why Democratic Party leadership chose to act unilaterally in appointedly anti-democratic way. I acknowledge I'm not.
Yeah, I would just say that's not true. That's not where you're getting information. We have lost this war in terms of communication. I am not aware of any Democrat who believes in open borders. I'm not aware of any elected official, and there may be one out there. We need immigration laws. That's part of our history. It's evolved. I want strict enforcement of our immigration laws, but we also have to adjust them to the needs of the country over time, and primarily to the needs of our country and our treaties and our obligations. So I would refute that. If you have information that you disagree with me, I'd love to see it, because I've never seen anything other than misrepresentation through social media and other media outlets that we somehow want open borders. So I don't think what you just stated is, I would refute it sternly. There are some people who want more open, for lack of a better word, immigration policies, but nobody believes in an open border.
Excellent. Thank you, Congressman. Would you like to wrap up with a few words?
Sure. I just want to thank you all, as always, for joining us. I hope it worked. I want to really thank Nikki and the work that her organization does, and so many of them like them. This country has a long history of non-governmental agencies being very important forces in this country, and you are an example of that right now in this point of history, in my view. It's so important that you and all of your colleagues and partners do, and I just want to thank you so much. You've shown up in such a big way, and America will never know how much you've done to protect our Constitution, our democracy. Let me say that I know we've got, let's see, 74 questions in the Q&A. As always, our band of hardy employees in my office will do everything we can to answer questions. Nikki, if we can work with you on many of the questions, we will do that, as long as we have your address, your contacts, either your postal address or your email is most efficient, please, for us. The lights just went off in the district office, Janessa.
Apologies.
It's not because we didn't, and it's not because we didn't pay the bills. It's just we're efficient. And then
Very still.
just please stay in touch. We've got another in-person town hall coming up next Monday in the district when I get back. We're hoping very, very much that I will be back. There's been some conversation about us having to stay because the president and the Republican leadership wants to force a vote. They've promised a vote on this Reconciliation Act before the 4th of July. So I may be here, but I will be there virtually, and we'll have it in person. I'm very hopeful that I'll be back there. We'll continue to do this dialogue. And let me just say, I once again, it's stressful. I don't want you to think that I don't understand and feel your anxiety and your pain. I do, in a very large way. I've had a long history as a former restaurant owner of being able to compartmentalize stress in politics, so I can get a good night's sleep and focus the next day on the challenges of that day. But I'll tell you, for the first time in a long time, I've had a lot of sleepless nights since January 20th. But we've taken that anxiety and we're focused it in a very powerful way to do everything we can in this moment of history to defend this great country that we're so fortunate to be part of against a domestic enemy, in my view. We've got a president who doesn't understand the rule of law, does not respect the importance of laws. We don't always get what we want, and that's as it should be. Unfortunately, his history, if you read his history as a business person and his involvement in politics, he thinks adhering to laws and ethical behavior, in my view, is for suckers and for stupid people. I don't. I believe that the very basis of our American democracy and success is our adherence to law. And when the laws are wrong, there's a process to change them. And that's what legislating is all about. But we've got to fight right now. And for people who disagree with me, I'm happy to sit and meet with you and discuss it because that's what the conversation is about. You can be a Republican, you can be a conservative. As many of you know, when I registered to vote at 18 many years ago, I was a Republican. When I first ran for office, I was a Republican. If it wasn't for Pete Wilson, a Republican governor of California, I probably wouldn't be here because he appointed me to the Board of Supervisors. But I've always voted the way I am. I've always been a progressive. So those roles change over time. It's part of our history. So feel free to contact our office. Know that we are a small group of very hardworking public servants. Janessa, I'm looking at you. So please understand that we're doing everything we can to protect you as constituents and protect this country. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Congressman. Just for all to note, the town hall will be live on our YouTube and Facebook page after the event. If you would like to watch it again or share it with your friends, please do not hesitate to call our office if we can be of any